Yes, we had another court argument in a Donald Trump tax case today. But let's not talk about the substance of it. Let's instead talk about a vivid example of how a Mitch McConnell judge behaves. Because when you're a judge, civility matters, fairness matters, and yes, justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So today we had yet another Donald Trump tax return case argued in yet another appellate court. Please, somebody make it stop. All right, let's talk about how we got here. So we've been talking a lot about subpoenas for Donald Trump's tax returns and financial records. So there were actually two subpoenas issued for his tax returns and his financial records from his accounting firm, Mazars. One was issued by the New York District Attorney, Cy Vance. The other was issued by the House of Representatives, by Congress. Both of those organizations wanted to get their hands on that, likely incriminating information for different reasons. What happened is those two cases, those two subpoena challenges, got consolidated into one case for the time being and made their way up to the Supreme Court. And remember, when the Supreme Court got its hands on that case, they said Donald Trump is not a king. He's not absolutely immune. He's not above the law. He needs to go back to court and litigate these cases like any other litigant. And then they sent those two subpoena cases, they broke them apart again, sent one back to New York for Cy Vance to pursue, and the other one back to Congress, where it's being litigated now in the D.C. court. We talked yesterday about the Cy Vance case because Donald Trump went back to court in New York. He made an argument that the subpoena was overbroad and issued in bad faith, and he lost in the trial court, and he lost in the appellate court. And now, yesterday's video tackled the topic of whether the Supreme Court should give him yet another bite at the apple. And the Supreme Court should not. They should refuse to review the case for a second time. Well, the House of Representatives subpoena is being argued in the D.C. courts, and today it was argued in the D.C. Federal Circuit Court of Appeals. But I don't want to talk about the substance of that argument. I listened to the live stream today, and it was boring and it was dense, but it was also pretty telling in a couple of ways. I want to talk about the judges who heard today's case. One is Judge Tatel, and I think I actually argued cases before Judge Tatel back in the 90s when I was a federal prosecutor arguing cases in that very court, among others, the D.C. Federal Circuit Court of Appeals. Judge Tatel was appointed in 1994 by President Clinton. You know whose seat Judge Tatel filled? The seat that had been vacated by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. When she was elevated to the Supreme Court, Judge Tatel got her seat. The second judge, Judge Millett. Judge Millett was appointed in 2013 by President Obama. You know whose seat she filled? John Roberts, when Judge John Roberts was elevated to the Supreme Court and became Justice Roberts. Then we have the third judge, Neomi Rao, appointed in 2019 by Donald Trump. You know whose seat she filled? Brett Kavanaugh's, when he was made a Supreme Court justice. There's some kind of karmic parallel going on there. Who is Neomi Rao? In the short time she's been a judge, we've learned some things about her. She's a Federalist Society member. She had clerked for Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. And from 2017 to 2019, she was a Trump administration official. And yes, she is one of Mitch McConnell's wonder judges that he crammed down the throats of the American people on a strict party line vote. And before she became a judge, as I said, she was in the Trump administration. The position she held from 2017 to 2019 was something called the Administrator of the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. And from the Trump administration in that capacity, Mitch McConnell decided to make her a judge. Yes, Donald Trump technically nominates judges, but let's face it, this is Mitch McConnell's ball game, right? He does his sort of, dirty judicial bidding through Donald Trump, tells Donald Trump who to nominate, and Donald Trump falls in line. And so in the short time that Judge Rao has been on the bench, the D.C. Federal Circuit Court of Appeals, she's issued a few opinions, including some dissents, and they have been widely criticized, even mocked, because they read like, virtual love letters to Donald Trump's executive power. And I want to read some reporting about some of what she has done from an article that was published back in March by the news outlet Vox, because I think it kind of sums her up pretty well. Here's how it reads, quote, "A federal appeals court ruled that the House Judiciary Committee must be allowed to see certain confidential documents relating to former special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into potential Russian interference in the 2016 election, despite the Trump administration's efforts to keep those documents secret. That court decision isn't particularly surprising. Indeed, it's a pretty straightforward application of a federal procedural rule governing grand jury secrecy. The one thing that stands out about the decision is Judge Naomi Rao's dissent." The article continues. "Rao is both a former Trump White House official and a former law clerk to Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, and her name is well known to anyone who has followed President Trump's efforts to avoid congressional oversight. Last fall, she wrote a widely mocked dissenting opinion that could have shut down much of Congress's power to investigate the president altogether." So the other thing that Judge Naomi Rao did is she authored the opinion that you might remember where she said Judge Emmett Sullivan must dismiss Mike Flynn's criminal case after he pled guilty, exactly the way Bill Barr is trying to make Judge Sullivan dismiss Mike Flynn's case. Yeah, that opinion didn't last long. You know why? Because the full appellate court, all of the judges who sit on the D.C. Federal Circuit Court of Appeals, gave her opinion a relook, and they resoundingly rejected her opinion, her reasoning, and they overruled that decision. And as we know, Judge Sullivan is handling Mike Flynn's case exactly as he wanted to and exactly as it should be handled, notwithstanding Bill Barr's attempt to tank that case, to do a favor for Donald Trump's criminal associate. So Naomi Rao is, virtually auditioning to be a Supreme Court justice, hoping that maybe an opportunity would come open under Donald Trump. It won't now, right? But everything she writes, it's mockable, it's transparent, and it feels a lot like Bill Barr's audition letter, right? When he auditioned to be Attorney General. And we all see how well that turned out for the American people. But she said something today as I was listening to the live stream argument of today's appellate court case and Donald Trump's tax return case yet again. She said something that was really demeaning and disrespectful of the House of Representatives, of a co-equal branch of government. So in today's argument, the general counsel for the House of Representatives, a gentleman named Doug Letter, a really accomplished appellate lawyer. I've listened to him argue many times. I've seen him argue in court. He was arguing the case on behalf of the House of Representatives, saying this subpoena is a good subpoena and it must be honored. It should be honored. And here's what she said in response to some of Mr. Letter's argument And it caught my attention, and I actually live tweeted it because it was so inappropriate. She said that, here's how I characterized it. I said, Judge Rao is downright disrespectful to Congress when she said, with what sure sounded like disdain in her voice, that the House of Representatives is a co-equal half branch of government. Meaning, I guess, that the House is only half a branch of government and the Senate is the other half of the legislative branch of government. You know, Congress is a co-equal branch of government, and that goes for the House and the Senate. But she just, with disdain in her voice said, well, you're only a co-equal half branch of government, Mr. Letter, representing the House of Representatives, not the Senate. And so I said in somewhat smart alecky fashion that I guess we can say that Judge Naomi Rao only represents a 1/3 co-equal branch of government, right? Because you have the trial court judges, the federal trial court judges, you have the federal appellate court judges, and then you have the Supreme Court. So I guess we break up the judiciary into thirds. So she, who is in that middle management level, the appellate court judges, that just represents a co-equal 1/3 branch of government. No, we would never say that because it's disrespectful and it's demeaning and it's smart alecky. But she feels completely unconstrained to mock the House of Representatives, a co-equal half branch of government. That really does expose her as somebody who doesn't have what it takes to be a Federal Circuit Court of Appeals judge, right? She just kind of perfectly sums up what a Mitch McConnell judge is all about. It's this sort of faux superiority because, she wears a black robe and sits above everyone else in the courtroom. She makes the point for why Joe Biden should add judges to the Federal Circuit Courts of Appeal. It is to neutralize these Mitch McConnell judges, right? These demeaning, mocking, belittling judges of other co-equal branches of government. Of course, she loves the executive branch because she tries to prop up Donald Trump's executive power, so much so that if you pay attention to her dissent, she doesn't think Congress should have any oversight powers of the all-powerful executive branch. And then in the next breath, she mocks the House of Representatives, Congress, as, you're a co-equal half branch of government. She makes the case for why Joe Biden should not pack the courts, but add additional federal judges to the Federal Circuit Courts of Appeal. They've been asking for more judges because of their caseloads. They need more resources. And frankly, it would only serve to neutralize the Mitch McConnell judges and level the playing field. And that's why Joe Biden should do it. That's one of the reasons he should do it. Stay tuned, folks, because who knows, tomorrow maybe there will be yet another court argument in yet another Donald Trump tax return case. I, for one, sure hope not. Stay safe, folks, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.